Good day and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. In this video we're going to be breaking it down spec by spec, class by class for each of the Citrine gems and basically giving you a good idea on which ones to pick. So what I'm going to do is in the beginning I'm going to do an overview of the gems super quickly. Then we are going to go by each class and then do each spec, and I'll try to touch on why it's good for each spec, but mainly I just want to kind of give the list of the gems. So of course if you have any discussion you can put in the comments down below. Please also know that basically these are subject to change at any given time, so it's not like this is set in stone. So there are 12 gems in total. The Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine. This one increases your ability to deal damage by dealing nature damage every time your spell and abilities proc. Then you have the Squall Sailor Citrine. Your spells and abilities have a chance to slice 5 enemies with a rushing sea breeze, dealing nature damage. Then you have the Seabed Leviathan's Citrine, which grants you stamina and increases your slice slightly. In addition, being above a certain percentage of the health will give you additional frost damage. The Windsinger's Ruin Citrine, which will give you a certain amount of secondary stats. Then you will have the Fathom Dweller Citrine, which also gives you secondary stats. The difference here is this one gives you stats based on your highest current secondary. So for example, it would give me Mastery if I was to place it in, whereas this one will give you flat out Mastery. In addition, all other Singing Citrine effects are increased based on your total Mastery. So this one has added benefits. Then we have the Legendary Skipper's Citrine. Your spells and abilities have a chance to cast a random Singing Citrine effect to 150%, so this is like a generic kind of fit-all. Then we have the Roaring Queen Citrine. Your spells and abilities have a chance of triggering the Singing Citrine effects for nearby allies. This is more of a utility-based one. Then we have the Marina's Hollowed Citrine. Your spells and abilities have a chance to bathe an ally in restorative water that jumps to 2 nearby allies, restoring health. The Old Salt's Bardic Citrine, which has a chance to whisper a She-Shanty, healing allies over a certain period of time. The Storm Sewers Citrine, which gives you a chance to shield an ally, absorbing damage taken, and also reducing the amount of damage that attackers take as well. Then we have the Stormbringers, which gives you just flat out stats of every secondary. And then the Undersea Overseas Citrine, which gives you a chance to drench an ally in freezing seawater that bounces up to 2 nearby enemies. An important thing to note is all of the effects scale based on your ring at the time. So for example, if I was to place this Thunderlord's Crackling, you will notice that it has that amount, but if I was to upgrade my ring, it would then increase in amount as well. So that covers all of them. Now, so let's talk about Death Knight. I'm on a Demon Hunter currently, but let's talk about Death Knights. So obviously your Blood DK, Frost DK, and Holy DK. So all 3 specs really like 3 of these. They like the Fathom Dweller's Ruin Citrine, due to the fact that Mastery is so powerful on every single one of them. Mastery being very crucial to Death Knights and how they restore their health. Then of course as well we have the Legendary Skipper's Citrine. Okay, this one, the reason why this is so popular on quite a few of them is because it randomly proc all of these other ones, or at least any of the abilities of these other ones, and then when you combine that with the Fathom Dweller's Ruin Citrine, which increases the effectiveness, it basically gives you a chance at randomly proccing any of these other abilities at a massively increased level, which is very powerful. And then we have the Stormbringer's Citrine, which obviously gives you huge secondary stat boosts, which is welcome with most melee classes. For Blood DKs, you can look at having the Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine, as this will obviously give you an ability to deal a little bit more damage. In Mythic Plus, a consideration to give for Blood DKs is the Roaring Queen Citrine, which would be over here. So a consideration would be the Roaring Sea Queen Citrine, which basically gives you a little bit more utility, especially when combined with a team that you know quite well. So it's these 5 for DKs. Fathom Dwellers, common on all. Legendary Skippers, common on all. Stormbringers, common on all. And then Thunderlords or Roaring Queens, depending on your situation as a blood DK. Next, we look at Demon Hunters. So for Demon Hunters are on the Havoc side of things. So for those who don't know, when you are looking at your specs, the Havoc is the damage and the Vengeance is the tank. So for the Havoc side of things, very similar to the DKs. So you're looking at Stormbringers, you're looking at Fathom Dwellers, and you're looking at the Legendary Skipper. So these are, generally speaking, what you want to go if you are looking at a Havoc DH. And this doesn't change between Mythic Plus and Raids. And then you have the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Vengeance Demon Hunter is also looking at Fathom Dwellers. You'll find this combination is very much the one that you will see a lot in pretty much most situations. And then instead of having Stormbringers, they're looking at Thunderlords. And the reason Thunderlords is so common for tanks is basically the fact that it provides you with a lot of extra damage. And it's the same reason Roaring Queen is quite common when you are looking at like Mythic Plus, because of the fact that it triggers when allied players die. And then of course also the fact that it's great utility in smaller groups, because the fact that you're now surrounded by 4 nearby allies, that organization, that group really allows it to proc quite well. In terms of the Druids, so Druids, I think, so we'll start, let's talk about the Balance and the Feral Druid, because Balance and Feral are both exactly the same and they follow the same as every DPS we've seen so far. So Stormbringers, Legendary Skippers, and Fathom Dwellers are going to be very, very common amongst the Druids. You're going to have Stormbringers, Legendary Skippers, and Fathom Dwellers as your chosen abilities. And for Restoration Druids, so Healing Druids, it will be the same. Stormbringers, Legendary Skippers, and Fathom Dwellers. This is the same across Mythic Plus and across Raid. You might say, why are we not going for healing ones on a Restoration Druid? The thing is that with Resto Druid, you're not too concerned about some of the healing abilities, because you have naturally quite a high base in terms of HOTs and everything. So generally you have enough heals in terms of pure heals to kind of go along. You're looking more for a boost to secondary stats. Where we change a lot with Druid is Guardian Druid. So for Guardian Druid, things change quite a bit. Fathom Dwellers is still very common, but there's quite a few different ones. So Squall Sailors is definitely up there. Squall Sailors Citrine. This is just basically another method of dealing damage, which is obviously quite cool. The reason why is obviously that AoE damage, which generally Guardian Druids don't have a huge amount of, so it just helps with that. Then we have the Wind Singers Runic Citrine. This one is a little bit more prevalent on Guardian Druids because of their high priority for secondary stats, and especially their baseline highest secondary stat, which is generally something that they really, really crave. Then we have the Undersea Overseers Citrine. So this one is obviously quite important because it gives you that ability to deal more AoE damage again. Obviously increasing that AoE damage very important, and for that reason you'll also find, of course, the Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine. So things are quite different for the Guardian Druids, understandably so, as obviously it's something that's a little bit different for them due to their high desire to improve their AoE damage. Next we talk about Evoker. Evoker is going to be very straightforward, and Evoker follows literally the exact same build we've seen a lot of across all the other classes. So you're going to see our good friend Legendary Skipper's Citrine, you're going to see Fathom Dweller's Citrine, and you're going to see the Stormbringer's Citrine. Again, a lot of the time this is going to be your go-to build. The reason is due to the ability to randomly cast every other ability at a higher effectiveness, the increase in mastery, which of course increases all your other effects as well, and then of course your increased secondary stats. So the reason all three of these are great is because of their synergy amongst themselves. This increases your secondary stats, this one increases your mastery overall, then increasing the effectiveness of your abilities by mastery, and then this one just procs all of these abilities randomly. So it's just something that's incredibly useful for all of them. So for Evoker, every spec, it's all three of these, which is pretty straightforward. Hunter, things get finally a little bit different, kind of. So for Hunter, these three are common again. So for every spec of Hunter, well, I don't want to say these three, we'll say these two. For every spec of Hunter, you can run these two. Legendary Skipper's Citrine and Fathom Dweller's Ruined Citrine. Very, very common. For Beast Mastery and for Marksmanship, you can run Stormbringer's Ruined Citrine, or you can run Crackling Thunder, the Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine. The reason you can run this is because of the ability to help increase single target damage, which is obviously great. It's what both of those specs thrive on, with obviously the big beast bites and obviously Marksman having that finishing blow. So you have these four that you can go. You can switch this one in for Stormbringers if you wish. So it's just going to depend on how you feel. For Survival Hunter, Stormbringers is not so necessary. This is because you're not super duper reliant on any specific secondary stat, and rather you're going to go for just a straight Thunderlords because you need that big increase in single target damage guaranteed from the Thunderlords. So generally speaking, it follows this trend. So we have the four main ones here. For Beast Mastery, okay, you can possibly consider Windsinger's Ruined Citrine. This is because of the high reliance with Beast Mastery in terms of its secondary stats. Right, so that is Hunters. Let's move on to obviously our Mages. So with Mages, we are looking at pretty much the same build across all three specs in terms of Fathom Dwellers and Legendary Skipper's Citrine. So both of these going to be prevalent across both of them. Arcane and Fire Mage want to use Thunderlord Citrine due to the increase in single target damage, whereas the Frost Mage will want to just consider Stormbringers due to the fact that they crave secondary stats. That's really about it. So Arcane and Fire Mage, they're running the Legendary Skipper Fathom Dweller combo, as most classes are, and then of course we are running the Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine. If you are running a Frost Mage, you're going to run Stormbringer's Ruined Citrine instead. So shouldn't really be anything too crazy. When we come to Monk, so for Monk, the Mistweaver and Windwalker Monk are going to run the Holy Trinity, Fathom Dweller's Ruined Citrine. Sorry, actually no, I lie. Okay, let's start again. So with Monk, for Windwalker Monk, we are running the Holy Trinity, Fathom Dweller's Ruined Citrine, Legendary Skipper's Citrine, and Stormbringer's Citrine. For the Mistweaver Monk, we are changing things slightly, running Legendary Skipper's Citrine. We are then going to be running Stormbringer's Citrine, and then we are going to be running the Mariner's Hollowed Citrine. And the reason we're running the Mariner's Hollowed Citrine is basically to help increase some of that AoE healing from the Mistweaver Monk and really just kind of doubling down on what it does well. In terms of Brewmaster Monk, things here change quite a bit. So obviously we have the standard Legendary Skipper's Citrine, but then you have a choice between the Fathom Dweller's Citrine, which obviously is quite a common choice, and the Undersea Overseer's Citrine, which is something that we haven't seen just yet. And the reason you may want to consider Undersea Overseer's Citrine is because of that increase in AoE damage. You also may want to consider taking, or you do want to consider taking the Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine, because of the increase in single target damage, which helps out the Brewmaster Monk quite a bit. So to recap, for Windwalker Monk, we're looking at Stormbringer's Rune, Citrine, Fathom Dwellers, and Legendary Skippers. For Mistweaver, Stormbringers, Mariner's Hollowed, and Legendary Skipper. And for Brewmaster, Legendary Skipper, Fathom Dwellers, Undersea Overseers, and Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine. Next, we come to Paladin. Paladin is simply going with the Holy Trinity. So, well, I mean, that sounds lovely. But yes, Paladin will be going with the well-tried and tested combination of Legendary Skippers, Fathom Dwellers, and Stormbringers Rune Citrine. You'll find a lot of the times this combination is very, very popular amongst quite a few of the classes, largely just due to its ability to give a lot of classes a little bit of everything that they want, giving them the ability to proc a mixed bag of abilities which can help them in many different ways, giving them an increase in a stat that generally speaking is quite good and considered for a lot of classes. I mean, most classes want mastery, it's a very important class stat for most people, and then Stormbringers gives you even more of those stats. And when you look at the percentage, like if you look at my versatility, 586 on 7237 is quite a big chunk. It's about 10% of that stat already, so it's pretty important when you consider all of those things. The same can be said for Priest. So Priest will be running the same regardless of Mythic Plus or Raid. So for Priest and Paladin, both are running the Holy Trinity as it should be, and they're running Legendary Skippers, Fathom Dwellers, and Stormbringers Rune Citrine. So again, just giving each of those classes a little bit of everything that they want and need, especially those mastery dependent classes, just giving them pretty much everything that they are going to want in terms of like performance. So for Priests, Legendary Skippers, Fathom Dwellers, and Stormbringers. Next, we look at Rogues. So Rogues are a little bit different. All three Rogues will be using the Legendary Skippers, which is very, 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 very popular. We'll start with Assassination Rogue, as Assassination Rogue runs the Holy Trinity. So Ass Rogue runs Legendary Skippers, Fathom Dwellers, and Stormbringers. The stock standard one that you've seen a lot of the classes use. Outlaw Rogue changes things quite considerably. Instead of Stormbringers, we bring in Crackling. This is to assist with single target damage, allowing them to increase that level of single target damage that they do quite substantially. And then we also use Undersea to increase AoE damage. So instead of taking those passive procs to proc random abilities, we go for more damage centric abilities to further double down on that damage level that we do. Then for Subtlety Rogue, we look at having Legendary Skipper, Fathom Dwellers, and Thunderlord's Crackling. This is just because Subtlety Rogue doesn't need that AoE damage, and you're better off proccing a little bit more mastery as it's more helpful overall. So to recap that, for Assassination Rogue it will be Legendary Skippers, Fathom Dwellers, and Stormbringers. For Outlaw it's Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine, Undersea Overseers Citrine, and Legendary Skippers Citrine. And for Subtlety it's Thunderlord's Crackling, Fathom Dwellers Ruined, and Legendary Skippers Citrine. Next, we will move on to Shaman. So the Shaman is quite different across all of the specs. What we'll do is let us start with the Elemental Shaman, which starts with the Holy Trinity, just because it's easiest to get it out the way. Legendary Skippers, Fathom Dwellers, and the Stormbringers Rune Citrine, which is obviously great and easy to know. So you run your nice tried and tested combination. For Enhancement Shaman, you have a choice. So for Enhancement Shaman, you can choose between Legendary Skippers or Wind Singers Citrine. So the reason you might want to go Wind Singers is because of, again, the importance of the Enhancement Shaman proccing its mastery procs and getting huge comeback procs. Its whole class is dependent on procs, so that secondary stat proc is super important for Enhancement Shaman. The rest can kind of remain the same. So that Windsinger's Rune Citrine, super crucial for that. You're welcome to take that over that. It will help you proc into your combos way, way, way better for enhancement. And then for Restoration Shaman, we remove both of those blue options and instead we go with the Mariner's Hollowed Circle or Hollowed Citrine, and this is to help with AoE healing. So Legendary Skippers, Mariner's Hollowed, and Stormbringers for the Restoration Shaman. So just to recap that for everyone, that will be the Stormbringers, the Holy Trinity for Elemental Shaman, being the Stormbringers, Fathom Dwellers, and Legendary Skippers. For Enhancement Shaman, it will be Stormbringers, Fathom Dwellers, and a choice between Wind Singers or Legendary Skippers. And then Restoration Shaman will be Stormbringers, Mariner's Hollowed Citrine, or Legendary Skippers Citrine. Next, we come to Warlocks, our second to last class. So Warlocks actually really cool in that they have a little bit of deviation. So let's talk about Destruction Warlock first, as of course they're the one that follows the Holy Trinity. So we have there the Legendary Skipper Citrine, the Fathom Dweller Citrine, and the Stormbringer's Ruin Citrine. So it follows the standard Holy Trinity where applied, very, very simple. For Demonology Warlock, we again apply the ability to have Wind Singer's Ruin Citrine. So very similar to Enhancement, Demonology requires a lot of secondary stats to help with its procs and its rotationary performance. So being able to move that secondary stat up quite a bit is quite crucial. So you can switch that in instead of Legendary Skippers if you're feeling like it's necessary, if your gear's not really in the right stat zone. So for Demonology, it is Legendary Skippers, Wind Singers, Fathom Dwellers, and Stormbringers. And then for Affliction, you can go back to the standard basic of Legendary Skipper and Fathom Dwellers, but instead of Stormbringers, we're going to take the more tried and trusted single target damage of Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine, as that will give us a bit more damage procs. All of these are the same for Mythic Plus, except for Affliction, which instead then wants to go to Stormbringers, just due to the nature of Mythic Plus and its requirement for more of secondary stats to help with overall damage, more so than single target damage due to the requirement to get rid of mobs. So just to recap that for Warlocks, for the Affliction Warlock, we have Thunderlord's Crackling, Fathom Dwellers, and Legendary Skippers. Demonology, we have Stormbringer's Ruin Citrine, Fathom Dweller's Ruin Citrine, Windsinger's Ruin Citrine, and Legendary Skipper's Citrine. And for Destruction Warlock, we have Stormbringer's Ruin Citrine, Fathom Dweller's Ruin Citrine, and Windsinger's Ruin Citrine, which is obviously great. And then finally, for Warriors, pretty much all of them are dependent on the Legendary Skippers, as always. For Arms Warrior, we are looking at the Fathom Dwellers and the Stormbringers. So that's your standard tri-trude combination, well and truly tested for Arms Warrior. So Stormbringers, Fathom Dwellers, and then obviously the Legendary Skipper's Citrine. For Fury Warriors, we are instead replacing Stormbringer with Crackling, again to enhance that single target damage. So for Fury Warriors, we are running Legendary Skippers, Fathom Dwellers, and then Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine, which is great. And then for Protection Warriors, we are running Legendary Skippers, Undersea, Undersea Overseer's Citrine to help with their damage, and Thunderlord's Crackling to help with their damage, because they don't need as much of the others. So just to recap that for Warriors, Arms Warrior is Stormbringer's Ruin Citrine, Fathom Dweller's Ruin Citrine, Legendary Skipper's Citrine. Fury Warrior is Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine, Fathom Dweller's Ruin Citrine, and Legendary Skipper's Citrine. And then for Protection Warrior, we have the Thunderlord's Crackling Citrine, Undersea, Overseer's Citrine, and Legendary Skipper's Citrine. All pretty straightforward. Guys, obviously, please don't feel pressured to take these picks. Understand as well that there is tuning constantly being performed on all of these combinations of gems to make them all highly competitive. So you may want to consider like not panicking about, you know, these gems. Don't panic. Choose the ones that you like the most, that you feel help you the most, and then once you've done that, you'll be ready to go. So please don't sit and panic about what's going to happen, what should I choose, what's top. You can check lots of websites all the time. Tuning is constantly done, and this is just to give you a nice guidance as to what you can do. If you feel like you just want to focus on healing as a healer and just proc all your heal mechanics and really boost your healing, then go for it. There's nothing wrong with doing so. So yeah, but that's it from me. See you guys next time. Bye.